Great. Well, thank you all for coming in. Columbian Editorial Board is pleased to welcome candidates for Clark Public Utilities Commissioner, District 1, I believe. And should mention, this is Jim Malinowski's position, and he is not seeking re-election. So I'm glad you could all join us. I'm Greg Jane. I'm the editorial page editor here at the Columbian, and I'll let the other editorial board members introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Colleen Keller. I'm the assistant news editor of the Columbian.
And I'm Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian and Columbian.com.
Right, and now we will move on to the candidates. Why don't you take just 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourself, explain why you are running for this position, and then we'll get into specific policy questions. And we'll start at this end with Sherry.
Sure. I'm Sherry Erickson. I'm running for this position because I bring technical utility experience to the position. I have a background in engineering, licensed engineer, as well as a business MBA from Washington State University. I've worked with utilities across the U.S. as a consultant, and my hope is to make a local impact with this knowledge and contribute to not only the customers, but to the utility and helping to stabilize operations.
Great, thank you.
My name is Chris Thobaben. I am, live in Vancouver, planted my flag here after getting out of the Marine Corps, and have really fallen in love with the community and the region. But one of the things that I've seen in my professional development is, technology is moving faster than what models and historical averages are going to be able to support. And so everything we know now is kind of getting thrown out the window, and that's the kind of experience that I'm trying to bring to our PUD as they look into the next 5, 10, 15 years, because it takes a long time to move a big ship like the PUD. And that's not just on the electrical side, though. We need to grow capacity. I talk about routinely how fast it's growing and how poorly prepared we are, but more importantly, in terms of broadband. I've pushed for several years now as the leader of the broadband action team for Clark County, trying to bring broadband as a utility. Right now, because our PUD has chosen not to take it on as a utility, we're effectively taxing our residents. And so preparing us for the digital era that we are now 20, 30 years into, it's an immediate need that needs leadership at the front.
Great, thank you. And James.
Clark County native, announced it back in December because I was really eager to get out and start serving the community. That's kind of helped shape me into the person I am today. Really took advantage of that time to start attending all the PUD commissioner meetings, the PUD informational sessions at the Hilton in March and February. I've had an opportunity to attend multiple the Center, Yackle, Richfield, Battleground Council meetings. I really wanted to start embedding myself in their community, building relationships with their community and their leaders. I also took that time to meet with industry experts, business owners, residents. I think anybody that's running for public service needs to be visible, approachable, and communicate. I want to be a commissioner because I really want to work with this great team at the PUD. I think they have ever since I started going to these PUD commissioner meetings, their focus is on the customer. And I really appreciate that. I think they show a lot of value and commitment to their job. I bring, much of my career, I bring 25 years of business development and customer service background. Much of that time I was in the water wastewater industry. I wrote protective coating systems for concrete and steel in high corrosive areas. I got to work with engineering firms, municipal engineers, utilities, worked along with Army Corps of Engineers, John Day Dam, Bonneville, and through project inception to completion. I got to see the complexity it takes to run and operate a city town, and it just got me the urge of running for PUD. I've been wanting to run for public service for many years, but my wife and I had a plan, wait till the kids are in college, so I had time to take on a second job.
Great, thank you. And thanks again to each of you for joining us. Start out with, in a couple of months ago, the utility announced I believe, a 14% overall rate increase coming up. What do you think is the reason behind that? And could that have been prevented with a little more foresight and management along the way? And we'll start with Chris.
Yeah, I think it was known for several years that this was coming. I think they made a decision to put it off as long as possible for the benefit of the community members, our citizens. I think it is something that is really, really hard to avoid coming forward. I don't know if what their approach is going to be, or what their mindset was coming into it. I think that they have poorly anticipated the demand on our grid relative to the water supply. I think January is a perfect example of that. Nobody has been listening close enough to the forecasts as they've been coming with snow counts going down, water availability. You know, we almost had brownouts in January, and I think we blew through our financial reserves in just a couple of days. And that is going to be a trend going forward that we have to be prepared for. I think the recent decisions to shift off to Bonneville Power and to rely on their larger portfolio to be able to solve the problem is a great immediate response, but it is not one that's going to carry into the future, because every other subordinate power consumer is going to be doing the same, because nobody is prepared for this. And Bonneville Power is going to be left holding the bag for all these folks that haven't been prepared for what is now a very, very complicated and hard problem to solve.
So if you're a board member, how would you prepare for that?
Yeah, so right now, like we don't have key indicators to track that would prepare us for this. I've asked at several PUD meetings over the past couple of years, like, what are you looking at in terms of costs? What are you looking at in terms of forecasts? And like many problems within organizations, they look to historical data. And so they're going off of 5-10 years ago data. And if you look at the way we track our grid and the way we track our utility, our individual production costs relative to, say, like France, for instance, they have a much more granular understanding of where they produce their power and how. And I think that, to me, is where our PUD leadership could be asked to, if you're not asking the right questions, that are going to be providing the right data. I'm a data scientist. Like, that's the kind of like what I'm fascinated by. If you're not formulating the questions correctly, you're not going to be prepared when, changes occur. And changes have been hinted at for a long time, but they haven't been preparing themselves. I think there are a lot of things that they are doing well when it comes to how they're looking out at their renewable portfolio, how they're trying to grow efficiency programs. But again, these are rounding errors in the massive shortfall we have of, thousands of megawatts shortage over the next couple of years.
Right, thank you. We'll move on. James?
Yeah, coming from the business side of things, I worked in an industry where we would routinely have increases once, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. And what we would try to do is give them plenty of warning so they can manage their business and their personal life. I think moving forward, more likely, we're going to have more rate increases. The least regressive way possible would be a more manageable way for businesses and low-income families to manage themselves. My wife has been in education for nearly 25 years. She is the director of teaching and learning for the La Center School District. That 14.5 increase just hurt them hard. That was like $28,000-$29,000. That's a teacher. Being able to see that come ahead of time would have helped them manage their budget. 1 to 2% increases throughout the year, whatever it might have been periodically. It had to happen. I mean, it was unavoidable. I was actually at the meeting in January where EES Consulting came in and presented the 4 tiers of options for the commissioners. And you could see how frustrated they were passing on an increase. They did not want to do this. Their first interest is always the customers. So.
Great, thank you. Sure.
Sure. I'm grateful that we have a public utility. I work with different types of utilities across the US, and relatively speaking, our rates are lower than most throughout the United States. So an increase is always noticed. So the revenue requirement is driven by primarily power supply costs. So 60% of the revenue requirement comes from what the cost of power is. And then on top of that, there's operational costs. Both of those things trickle down into what the rates are within each customer class. In the recent past, we've seen more extreme weather. Clark Public Utilities is primarily a residential power supply provider. Most of their customers are residential. The response to that is air conditioners turn on and peak demand increases. Whereas in more industrial agricultural areas, residential doesn't have as much control on peak demand. That being said, there are also there's a lot of population growth. This is a really great place to live, and people continue to move here steadily over time. So the utility has to manage capacity growth as a result of population increase. I'm a big believer in strategic rate design, that is offering incentives to shift peak demand to lower overall costs. Clark Public Utilities is rolling out AMI, which will allow us to do these capacity studies and look to see how we might be able to shift demand and lower the power supply costs, which could keep rates steady and reliable. I don't
What's
see.
AMI? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
You're
sure.
ahead of
I
me
know,
here.
acronyms. So AMI is automated meter information system. So basically, it's a two-way communication system between the meter at your house or business and the utility company. And it gives you real-time data information. So I can tell what your demand is at 1 p.m., 9 p.m., 2 a.m., and then we look at the curves to figure out how to manage those peak demands. It's a capacity issue.
So manage for each individual customer, you mean, or in total?
Typically, you look at customer class.
Okay,
So we have at Clark Public Utilities, you have the residential customer class, you have they call it general service, which is a commercial customer class, and then you have the industrial customer class. So you look at these customer classes by type, and you take data from all of these customer classes, determine coincident peaks within that customer class. So there are definitely opportunities for improvement. Solar helps to do that. Distributed energy resources and commercial, that helps to manage demand. And again, incentives. Is it cheaper for me to run my dishwasher in the morning? Yes. How do we shift those habits? It's difficult to do, but other utilities across the US are already doing it.
Chris and James, what do you think about that? About being able to shift user demand, and but is that worth the effort? Can it be effective? What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I've been out hitting doors. I've knocked on nearly 4,000 doors. And when people hear about time of use or AMI, I think communication is key here. We need to get out and talk about it. A lot of residents feel that, oh, that is the PUD coming in and setting my thermostat. And when I sit there and talk to them on the doorstep about, no, this is going to help you manage your power use, and this is actually going to help lower your bill and save costs. It's about managing your time. They definitely see a benefit. I think that's one thing that we need to look more into as well. As I've been out and about hitting different luncheons and chamber events, I think our PUD assumes we get everything, all the customers get everything from the internet or the paper. Well, I came across somebody at the Yakko Market Fair a few weeks ago, this guy Larry, where he came up to me and he had a vendor booth right next to me. And he came up and was talking about how he couldn't pay his power bill and he was wondering about options. So I was going to give him the link to the PUD to talk about financial assistance programs. He then started welling up. He told me how he was beaten in the head as a child. He can't read, he can't write. He had the only source of income he had was a caregiver. And the only time he received information on how to, better himself or utilize regional resources to help financially is the Battleground Senior Luncheon. What I think we need to do, and I go back to this session at the PUD had at the Hilton. I thought it was an amazing informational session. I think they just hit everything perfectly. I would like to see, let's take that on the road. Go to these chamber events, go to these luncheons and inform these residents and business owners about AMI, about our financial assistance programs. To me, I'm all about visibility, approachability, and communicating. I think the next commissioner that sits in that chair needs to be able to communicate, collaborate, ask questions, and be an advocate for the community.
Chris, what do you think about the AMI?
So in my profession, like the company I run, like sensors are the basis by which we allow for autonomous decisions to be made. And humans cannot keep up with the rate of change in large systems. We dumb it down to our level to be able to move buttons, set rules and conditions for computers to follow, but we still can't make the decisions fast enough. And artificial intelligence, the automation of systems is changing the way everything in the world of business, the world of operations, computers is being done. So right now, our PUD is operating it's a really good PUD, but it's still operating in terms of 1990s, early 2000s systems and methods. I think when you come with AMI and you can outfit the PUD's network operating center with all the data points for those locations, not only can you inform end users as to when potentially they are able to save the utility and protect their own rates to keep them low, but you're also able to plan. You're able to communicate to businesses to say, these are the times for you businesses to be able to consume energy. These are the times that we need to be able to buy power in advance, because now once we get that granular data for winter this year, our winter consumption is different than our summer consumption. Heat pumps is an example. Like, we are rolling out heat pumps because they are objectively more efficient than our other HVAC units. But if we do that, what does that look like at the house level? What does that look like at the business level with like PTAC units and the hotels? Those types of things depend on AMI, the sensor at the point of consumption, to be able to have actually informed decisions rather than just rules, estimates, and averages informing an entire county.
Correct.
What should Clark do with the River Road plan? Should it be sunsetted? Chris, you want to tackle that first?
Yeah, it shouldn't be sunset in the sense of like a top priority. We have a shortage of power, and if you look at other states right now, when they try to sunset energy production beforehand, it just drives up rates. Because if we sunset that one, we're just going to bring online another one, which is probably going to be a gas solution anyways. But what we can do is to look towards building capacity at the fastest rate possible. And working through Bonneville Power, working through their larger portfolio, we now have a safety valve to a degree. But I think, to me, this is where base energy load becomes the singular focus of new programs and new initiatives within the PUD. How do you create base load? And to me, that is that we have a responsibility to the generations that come to not make that a carbon emitting base load source. And so the only other solution out there is nuclear at this point. And so considering and pursuing that as a base load solution, simultaneous to that, looking at power storage, pulling energy, developing energy across the state that can be brought down through the river. We move electricity across massive waterways. We can do this same thing down the Columbia. That right there is a way to distribute variable energy sources like wind and solar from the east, bring them to the west. And so the combination of those with AMI will allow us to draw power when we need it, store power when we can, and predict more accurately and granularly where it's going to be consumed tomorrow.
Sherry, where does the River Road plan fit in the mix?
I think the River Road generating plant is, it's a great asset for the utility, literally and figuratively, because it provides currently its sole source to the utility. It provides 34% of the total power supply at the utility, and it brings it in at lower than market rate. So part of the reason our rates have been affordable and stable is because we have sole access to this source of generation. We also have a very strong and important relationship with the BPA, and we are able to get a lot of renewable resources from the BPA, and those two make up a large portion of our power supply. That being said, the River Road generation plant will come in conflict with the CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act. And how are we going to deal with those mandates coming from the state? And there's a couple things that the utility is doing and can do and that I support. And that is changing the ability for the plant to come on and offline a little quicker. Turn it into more of a peaker plant as opposed to base load. And I believe that the state would be in support of, utilizing this as opposed to going to market power supply purchase. Also, there's options at the River Road Generating Plant to use alternative fuel sources. But it's used infrastructure that we've developed and created and make it the most, the best possible source of power generation through maybe alternative fuels and other upgrades that they can do to the system. Looking at any source of generation, you have to also balance, like, what are the operational costs versus what are the depreciation costs? Where are we at in terms of the age of this piece of infrastructure, and when does it need to be retired? And how are we going to retire it? Do we sell it off? Do we keep it? That's going to be a strategic decision that comes up within the next 10 years. It takes about 10 years to bring new power supply into the transmission system. So if they're going to build modular nuclear in the eastern part of Washington, we've got about a 10-year wait to get to it. So those two decisions are going to need to be made simultaneously.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I mean, we need to find a source of energy that's gonna offset the River Road plants. 240 megawatts is hard to replace, and we're gonna need to make sure we do that. We can keep it at asset, or we can sell the offset. I would like to see the River Road plant to be offset into hydrogen or renewable natural gas. What I trust, going to these PUD commissioner meetings, I really like how they put their future forecast plans together. I like how they work with outside consultants. I really do think the industry experts at the PUD need to work alongside some outside consulting firms, come up with a plan, kind of like they did with the rate increase, and kind of get different eyes on it. I think we have a lot of moving parts, and we need to make some good decisions. I think Sherry and Chris hit some very good points.
Colin?
Yeah, I am interested in, Chris was talking about the broadband is something that public utilities should be taking on and championing. And I'm curious, I'd like Chris to expand on that a little bit more about what you see the potential for broadband. And then I would interested in what the other two think about broadband. So Chris, you could.
Absolutely. So starting back in 2019, I took on the role as the broadband action team leader for our county. And what that meant is trying to bring affordable, universal broadband to our county as a priority. We worked with the ports, we worked with the cities, we worked with the counties, the county. We eventually came to the PUD as the best candidate, hands down. So myself and a team of about 15 people from across the county that have industry experience as internet service providers, put together a business plan. We presented it to them. They went back and they used that as like the basis for their numbers, and they ran their numbers themselves. But again, it wasn't a priority to them at the time. We were told by one of the current commissioners that, hey, back in 2004 we considered this, and at the time we didn't really see it as a priority. And this was 2020. Even if everybody had kids at home during COVID trying to, learn virtually, or if you've ever had somebody, the deaf community trying to get services via, the internet, telehealth, like all the business does not operate without the internet. And so to me, it is a core function that we know now. We've presented a viable business model the PUD could turnkey on today. They can use the existing light-based, light utility district. You could have the same thing for a broadband utility district. So we already have the functions, we already have the administrative capacity to do it. And the biggest thing to me is it will reduce costs of anybody who uses broadband or internet by $10 to $20 a month. And I know we're talking right now about a 14% increase in electrical costs as really meaningful, but if you look at broadband as another opportunity, that makes up for that entire electricity cost increase.
Do you have a figure on what it would cost the utility to implement this?
Yes. So what we propose is basically you have a loop that runs the county, and then that is your backbone. Think of it as like a human body, and then there are linkages from that, and there are terminals to small communities that are being built or small communities that subscribe to it. And then so you're building these spurs off of it. And as you grow, that what we look at right now, just with a couple anchor customers that I said that is a priority for them, was around $21 million, but it pays for itself. It pays for itself after about 6 years. And that to me is the foundation by which you then grow further. Neighbors then feed neighbors. There's a whole host of other PUDs that have already done this. This is not reinventing the wheel. We just have to actually take it as a priority here.
Okay, Sherry, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, telecommunications are fundamental to our economy. Access to telecommunications is part of our responsibility with social governance. Is the utility the right venue to do telecommunications? That's the question. There are 28 public utilities in Washington, and about half of them have included telecommunications as part of their offerings, which tells me that, yes, it's possible. Most of those utilities are more rural. We have infrastructure in the urban parts of Vancouver. We have access to telecommunications. The utility would run it at cost, which would create savings. The trick is, will we be able to get federal grants to help with the cost of the infrastructure development, since it will be redundant to the system that's already in Vancouver? So we would need low-income grants as well as grants for the rural areas to make that pencil out. I would be interested in a study to pin down what those numbers would be and look at those numbers in detail. I don't know them like Chris does, but I would like them to review and to visit them as a commissioner.
Okay, and James, how about?
I'd be supportive of the PUD doing a feasible study. Like I said, my wife's been in education for nearly 25 years. She was an instructional teaching coach at the time at Evergreen School District when 2020 came in. It was horrendous. It was hard. She was talking to teachers and parents routinely every night about not having access to education online. It's rough. I am concerned, obviously, but I want to see a study that costs, upgrades, and manageability. There's high initial investment, operational challenge, regulatory and legal hurdles, financial risks, system maintenance, upgrades, managing the system. Anything that we invest in, we make sure we have a good return for our customers. It wasn't too long ago, back in the 90s, when the Park PUD took on the La Center wastewater treatment plant. And after exhausting operational costs and upgrades, Park PUD then transferred the ownership of the facility back to the center. So do we stick with what we know, utilities, water? If we do move forward, we got to make sure we are doing a forecast and we're making smart decisions. But I definitely understand firsthand how hard it is and tough it is not to have internet access, especially in the rural areas, for just education and other reasons.
Right, thank you.
I would like to, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
So the PUD did commission a study on this and did do a feasibility study based off the business plan that we provided. That is on file from 2020. They revisited again in 2021. They decided not to take action on it, that it was not a priority. Their isolation at the time was they didn't know where Starlink would be. They said by their forecast, Starlink could disrupt the entire market and everybody would have Starlink probably by 24 to 25. But we're mid 24 now, and Starlink is a world-changing technology, but it is not a household because it's $120 per month at a minimum. And so unless you need $120 worth a month to be spent on the internet, it isn't viable. So they have the study, they have done it, they have just not prioritized it, is the simple part. And as far as costs go, we don't need to have any of the current ratepayers, any residents of our county pay for it in addition to their current bill unless they subscribe to it. And it'd be through a bond initiative. So it'd be paid out over 20 years, which reduces the risk to the county at large. And it's only then delivered to those communities that are asking for it.
Okay, thank you. And didn't Starlink satellite get knocked off that?
There are
today was
yes,
people aren't
yes.
getting their certain, something happened
Oh,
with the satellite.
Bad timing. Thank you, Colin. The board recently approved a raise of, I believe, 5% for the CEO. What were your thoughts on that? Is that fiscally responsible? We'll start with James.
You know, I am all about local leadership and promoting within. I know firsthand, coming from a very large company in the past and currently, it's not cheap to find good leadership. People are going to follow. We need to maintain our great customer service at the PUD, and part of that stems from the top. I work for a company right now. After 37 years, we had our president and CEO retire recently, a couple of years ago. Everybody at our company was concerned, okay, is this somebody from Texas, California, who's coming? Everybody behind the scenes that works for the company really wanted somebody that worked within our company and that's from our community. I think it says something that's telling, especially for a community-minded organization that I work for. We got that person that we were hoping for, and with the company for over 20 years, from Clark County. And to me, that matters. We have line workers, customer service. We have so many different people at the PUD that live in our community. I believe the faces of the community are the ones that we see out on the utility poles every day. But the leadership obviously is in the office at the top, making the hard decisions. And we need to make sure whoever that person is knows the company they work for, knows the backbone of it, knows where it started, and the people that surround it. So I'm for it. Commissioners, I stand by their decision. They know a lot better than I do. And if they felt it was deserving, then I'm all for it.
Thank you. Chris?
Raises, I'm a CEO. I give performance-based evaluations and I give performance-based raises. Lena is from inside the PUD, as James was mentioning. She has been a customer-focused person from the get-go. I don't know what her reviews look like, but if she warrants it, like from her performance, like she has been singularly focused since the day she joined the PUD on trying to ensure that the water and electricity was delivered and the customer was satisfied. I believe that's probably why she got the job in the first place. And I haven't noticed any depreciation of quality of service or things of that nature. And part of this tough decision with the rate increase, that is that's squarely on her shoulders to put in the hard work to do that. So if she merited it, then absolutely.
Sure.
Sure. So I believe fairness is a relative scale. So when I saw her salary post online, I thought, wow, how is that relative to the average income in Washington? The average income in Washington is about 70,000. And then I looked at how is her salary relative to other general managers of utilities. So I started looking at some of the other public utilities, what the general managers make, because it's all public information. And Ms. Whitler's salary was higher than the smaller utilities, but much lower than the investor-owned utilities. So I believe that, her salary relative to her responsibilities is fair. And I believe the rate increase is also, it's a reflection of not only her performance, but also, inflation in general and what all the other employees are getting in terms of, salary increases over time. So I support what she's doing and I support her leadership. And I believe she's had great performance since she started as general manager.
Thank you. Craig?
So the PD signed an agreement with Ponderay County Public Utility District by the capacity box can dam for 15 years, starting in 2026. So are these kind of capacity agreements the right kinds of way for Park to go, and should they be looking for money? Kinds of arrangements. So James, you want to start?
Yeah. Actually, a few weeks ago, we were at a PUD commissioner meeting, and by June 30th, PUD had to send a letter to the BPA in consideration of switching away from the slice block product to the load following product, which would start in October of 2025 through 2028. Now, the load following product provides real-time balance and reliability. My main concern is always going to be reliability and affordability. Affordability is the most important thing, and reliability and maintaining the service. So from what I've read into it, the rate design is still not complete. But if it does does what it says with the reliability and real-time balance, and we're able to manage the cost better, that's a good way to go. I mean, we have to think of other avenues with the demand. I mean, everywhere I go, from Yackle, the center, Richfield, Battleground, from leadership, I hear growth, 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 growth. We saw what happened in Richfield. I know we try to do comprehensive plans and we try to forecast of how population is going to grow. Businesses are coming in because since we're a victim of our own success. People want to be here. So when you saw the boom in Richfield, I don't think they saw it moving that fast. So we've got to think for the future. And I think that's what the great men and women at the PUD did.
Chris?
I think it's a good way to bridge ourselves towards a more independent future. I mentioned earlier how everybody in the world is reeling from the power consumption that is associated with artificial intelligence and server farms and things of that nature. So I use this metric as like, when you do a Google search, that's 5 to 10 seconds of a 100-watt light bulb. When you do an AI query of some type, right? That is 5 to 10 minutes of a 100-watt light bulb. Now, when we wake up in the morning, we start asking questions. What's the weather going to be like? Hey, can you help me write this email? Like, our power demands are going to outpace what the BPA can respond to in time, is my opinion, and other service providers right now. We have to be thinking for ourselves. We have to be planning accordingly, assuming that everybody else is going to probably take the easy way out. So we have to act on our own. We have to plan for capacity. And I think that we seek these agreements now, but then if you look at in the years to come, so if we don't like this 14%, this 14-point jump that we're experiencing now, they'll get burned the first year when power becomes very expensive. But the next year, we are going to experience basically every other year rate jumps or something to that effect, because they're going to recover those costs and send them back to us for the next year. And so we will have less forecast capacity to say businesses, homeowners, this is what you should look to spend next year on your electricity, because we won't have control over it.
One thing when you say everybody, meaning utilities, is going to look to take the easy way out. What would be the easy way out in this?
Well, it's not. It's building power production is hard. Mm-hmm. Whose land do you put it on? How do you build the utilities, the capacity to distribute that power? Like, where is that being managed? Where is the capital expenditure, the grants we were mentioning?
So the easy way would be tapping into infrastructure that already exists.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. So I support, regional hydro. The utility has purchased from the Packwood Hydro Project and Chelan for quite some time, and both investments have worked well for the utility. They brought in very affordable and reliable electric service. And I support these types of regional projects. And I support hydro as a renewable energy source. Even though I-937 wants to push us away from hydro, I would rather invest in a hydro project than wind at this time. So yes, I support it. It's not going to provide a lot of capacity, but I think that power purchase is heading in the right direction.
Yeah, everyone has mentioned it, but let's talk a little more specifically about nuclear, especially the small modular. The utility has been involved in a study about this. What is your opinion of modular nuclear? Is it something that should be avoided, or is it sort of an inevitability? And James, why don't you start on that?
I am very much for innovation and utilizing all our regional resources. We need to think about the future. I mean, you think about data centers. I mean, they're just a sponge of using up electricity, and they gravitate to Oregon and Washington because of the hydro. So we need to figure out how we're going to combat that. So nuclear, it is a topic of, I mean, it comes up a lot when I'm door knocking. I'm surprised how many people bring it up, but if you look at the Pacific Northwest Pacific Utilities Conference Community, their future forecast, Clark PUD did touch on it at the informational city sessions at the Hilton. That's why it's called a future forecast, because we need to make sure that we safely transmission. How is it going to be delivered to our customers? Waste disposal, safety, and the overall costs. So that's why I like how our PUD, I like how the conference committees like PNUC, they take their time and they do what's called a future forecast, because we got to look into a lot of things. There's no doubt that there's a great advantage of it, but we got to make sure that we are delivering it safely to our customer, and we know what costs are that we're going to incur. And but yes, innovation is key. We have to.
Sherry, what do you think about that?
Sure. I support small modular nuclear. I think it's a great option for a clean energy future. It's going to take time to develop it and bring it into the transmission system. I actually really enjoyed the article that was written by the Columbian recently on the small nuclear and where it's being developed and how it's being developed and how Energy Northwest is leading this effort. And we would be beneficiaries of that investment by Energy Northwest. I think, as my opponent mentioned, that we're going to be in competition with data centers to get some of this power. How much of this power are the PUDs going to be able to get? Or is the Amazon, Microsoft data center, are they going to, buy it up before we have a chance to get a piece of the pie? So I'm excited for its development. I think it will be easier to bring onto the system and also easier to dispose of when at the end of its shelf life.
Okay, great. Chris?
So I'm a fan of small modular nuclear for the reason that it addresses a lot of the NIMBY concerns on my backyard. It's much smaller. People perceive it as less of a risk. It's easier to adopt. And I think that's why the technology leaders like the Microsofts, Amazons of the world are investing in it. But as it was pointed out, like they are going to beat us to the punch. They're going to move faster for a market that has demand for their product, and they're going to spend in ways that we aren't really comfortable and we can't compete because they have to pay for a product today. We need to be collaborators in that if we are going to have a place at the table. I think large nuclear, so greater than 300 megawatts, something beyond the small modular, is really where nuclear gains its efficiencies. But I think this is where the PUD could be a leader in the conversation. There are conversations right now at the federal level that are asking states, that are looking to states for leadership on what we do about recycling. Like right now, the rules were written based off 1950s and 1960s technology. We do not recycle our nuclear waste. Because of that, 100% has to go somewhere. And we have storage facilities and stuff that are not here. And this is not nuclear weapons, to be clear. There's nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. But large nuclear, like large scale nuclear, if we do recycling on site, means that 97% of the waste is not actually waste. It goes right back into production. And that to me is where large nuclear, not modular nuclear, is really where our future lies. If you're honest with the numbers of the full life cycle levelized costs.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right, anything else?
No, they're too smart for me, Greg.
It's like,
No reason to throw in the toss.
You got anything else?
no, I don't.
Okay, we will move along and give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any notable endorsements you would like to share. We'll start with James.
I since day one, I've just had a smile on my face, and I absolutely love this journey. I want to serve the community that has helped shape me into a person I am today. And I truly mean that. I have had so many mentors in life locally that have helped prepare me to get to this point. And I really feel it's my duty to help anybody I can. I think the next commissioner that sits in that chair needs to be able to communicate, collaborate, be visible, approachable. I think they need to be invested in the community. And I think they need to show a history of that. And I'm the membership and committee chair for the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. I was awarded the 2023 Leadership Clark County Outstanding Alumni Award. I'm the founder of the John McKibben Legacy Classic. I've worked hands-on directly with over 30 nonprofits and organizations in Clark County over the last 30 years. And I really think the community, business leaders, residents, and elected officials and organizations are recognizing that. Right now, as of today, IBEW Local 125 union members at Clark Public Utilities have endorsed me. Local 452 Vancouver Firefighters, Local Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 12, Vancouver Police Officers Guild, Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council, Southwest Washington Central Labor Council, Clark County Association of Realtors, Sheriff John Horch, former PUD Commissioner Carol Curtis, all the mayors in Clark County, State Representative Monica Stone, State Representative Paul Harris, State Senator Annette Cleveland, State Representative Greg Cheney, and four commissioners, councilors, mayor pro tems, deputy mayors, council members, and every endorsement I get, whether it's a resident, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a community leader, I take that with me, and it just makes me want to get up and work harder every day.
Great, thank you. Chris?
So we are at a really dangerous point in time. Like I don't think that our current commissioner's portfolio has the imperative nature of the future resting on their daily thoughts. My day-to-day wants and needs on the technology side for my business have made me keenly aware where we are headed. And so I want to bring a sense of urgency to the professional staff we have. The PUD team is great. They are, I think, just looking for where to focus. And I think when it comes to power production as the highest priority and broadband as a utility, those two pieces alone will make an enormous difference in both the pocketbooks of of the community members we have and the businesses we have, but also the future legacy that we leave behind. And so I am the primary candidate to provide leadership in those verticals. And my track record here in our county, in our community, you know, I've gone out to the hardest problems. Affordable housing, you know, the teams that I've led have now in the past 3 years produced 103 affordable housing units. Like that's more than anybody else that has done. And that was done on a volunteer basis, just doing work with good people. And I think that if I can replicate that just the same way as I was trying with broadband, I can with the team, with the PUD to solve these other tough problems.
Great, thank you, Sherry.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to run for PUD commissioner in our local county. I have worked with a lot of utilities over the last few years. I've seen a lot of dramatic change, not only in rates, but in policy. And I feel like this position on the ballot, more than any, it's important to have, you know, relevant technical, financial experience to bring to this position, so that when we're talking about, you know, interconnection agreements, demand management, rate design, how to bring in AMI, these types of conversations. I've seen what works with other utilities, and I've seen what doesn't work with other utilities. And I bring that expertise to the board in an effort to make our community a better place. I'm grateful that we have a public utility as well. It serves our people well. We have outstanding customer service, and I really want to keep a good thing going, but it's going to take strategic thinking to take on the challenges that are coming ahead for the utility. And I'm grateful to do that for my community.
Great, thank you. Thanks to each of you for joining us.